Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue dans cette toute première édition du concours de Start-up Effervescence. Je m'appelle Mounia Azi, je dirige le développement des programmes et partenariats chez Admar et Bioinnovation et c'est un plaisir pour moi d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui pour animer cette session qui va être très très dynamique en compagnie de Elias Benjeloun, de Montréal New Tech et des Jardins Innovation. Quelques mots sur ce concours. So this is a collaboration with partners across Canada with the main objective to stimulate the growth of young life science Canadian startups who develop technologies with a great level of innovation and transformation that will impact the life science and healthcare ecosystem. This competition was open to all Canadian startups across the country with working in different fields, biopharmaceutical, biotechnology, medical technologies, etc. For this first edition, close to 50 applications were received, which is already a great success. The applicants were selected based on 5 criteria: the degree of technology innovation, the unmet need, the differentiation, the team, and the business model. 10 finalists have been selected and invited today to present us their company and their technology, which will be the core of this session. Elias?
Un grand plaisir d'être avec toi, Mounia, vraiment. Puis d'ailleurs, ça faisait longtemps, on portait notre masque il y a quelques secondes, là, puis ça fait plaisir de l'enlever, de garder nos distances, évidemment, pour rester en santé, en parlant de santé. But indeed, the session will be, well, we're in the live studio in Montreal. The session will be mainly in English because, as Mounia just said, all the startups were really coast to coast, but not only the startups, the partners as well. And we're very, very grateful for the collaboration between a variety of partners, whether it's Bio-Québec, Santec, District 3, obviously Montreal In Vivo, CQIB, Bombe Créative, Biotech Canada, MedTech, Sage Innovation, Amplitude, Coopératon, and others. And a huge thanks to the sponsors and partners who helped us get this contest going, actually, from Desjardins, Caisse du Réseau de la Santé, Banque Nationale, Johnson & Johnson Innovation Lab, MedTech, PME Montréal, CQDM, and of course, Pfizer and Admare. So thank you very much for the generous support.
Our pleasure.
Those contests really need that kind of support so that we can empower the startups. And a little thing that you said, you know, like we talked about 50 applicants, but also the specific criteria is really to empower ones that didn't receive a lot of money or a lot of funding so that we can actually give them the opportunity to not only showcase, but create potentials of collaborations. Speaking of investment, it's a great pleasure to welcome with me today Cédric Bisson, who's a partner at Terralis Capital, who has tremendous experience, and I'm not going to go through all of it, in investing in life science, healthcare, throughout the world, but mainly in Europe, Canada, and the United States. He's also one of the co-founders of Inovia Capital, from whom we had some great news this week. I invite you to check it out. So, Cédric?
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. We are very, very privileged to have the participation of 9 judges. Donc, 9 juges seront sur le panel et seront impliqués pour revoir les pitchs des sociétés qui allons présenter. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the judges. First, Alexandre Leboutillier. Alexandre holds a PhD from Université de Montréal and has spent time in Europe, has a ton of experience in AI, and is one of the co-founders of Imagia. Imagia is a very well-known Montreal-based artificial intelligence company in the fight against cancer. He's also board member at Mila and at Ivado, MedTech, and at Montreal In Vivo. Alexandre, bienvenue, bonjour.
Bonjour Cédric, merci Mounia, Elias, it's a pleasure to be with you today. So when I look at all those contenders for the prize today, it's difficult to make a call, always trying to see what's the differentiator, because the goal is similar for most of them. We want to make change in treatment. So this is where we spent our time in the evaluation process, looking at, from my angle, how digital can help.
Thank you very much. Merci, Alexandre. The second judge is Ada Geklou. Ada is a principal at Sophie Nova Partners, based in Paris. She has a ton of experience from the deep science background. She was an immunology scientist at Danone, and she has a PhD from Imperial College in London. Ada has been involved in quite a few startups with a special focus on biotechnology, and we're delighted to have her join us. Ada, welcome. Bonjour.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the session.
Thank you very much, Ada. The next judge is Austin Walters. Austin is a managing partner at Springtide, based in Boston and Salt Lake City in the US, and he focuses on healthcare AI. He's also a serial entrepreneur and has experience in sales and marketing. Austin, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here today.
Wonderful. That's great. Betsabe Madani Herman, the next judge. So Betsabe leads and covers Canada for Borealis Ventures. She has a lot of experience in scientific exploration, strategic operations, as well as early stage investments. And she's been involved in businesses with various sizes. She was previously in charge of strategy and BD at Equicare Health, and will also spend time at Cerner, the healthcare IT company previously. She is quite involved in Canada, especially more specifically with Obio and Iricar, and was initially trained with an MBA from Tuck at Dartmouth in the States, and a Master of Engineering from UBC. Betsabe, welcome, bienvenue.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to hearing all the competitors' pitch and working alongside the judges.
Thank you so much. The next judge is Jennifer Hamilton. So Jennifer is with J&J, Community Impact and Investments. Jennifer has a very deep scientific experience. She has a PhD from the UBC in Vancouver. And prior to J&J, spent quite a few years in London with Nomura Phase 4 Ventures and with Rothschild Asset Management. She focuses on biotech and deep science, and we're delighted to have her with us. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you very much, Cedric. Looking forward to hearing all these great presentations today.
That's great. Thank you, Jennifer. The next judge is Kaylee Wilson. Kaylee is in charge of BD for Quark Ventures, based in Vancouver, and also acts as interim CEO of Sitka, a promising early-stage biotech company. She combines expertise in science as well as operational expertise, currently demonstrated as her role at Sitka. She has a PhD from the UBC as well, and we're delighted to have her join us as a judge. Kaylee, welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, Cedric. Really looking forward to being part of the panel.
Thank you.
Hearing all these pitches today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Michael Mee. Michael is a principal with Amplitude Ventures, which is a pan-Canadian life sciences fund. Michael was trained with a PhD and then quickly went to Boston, where he spent quite a few years with Flagship Ventures, focusing on company creation, and then continues his journey on company creation with Amplitude Ventures. So Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Cedric. Thank you, organizers. I really look forward to all the pitches. Best of luck to all the companies involved. Look forward to hearing this.
Thank you. Ozan Izinak. Ozan leads the Karavetsu Forum Canada, which is, Karavetsu is the largest angel and early stage investor network in the world, active across all continents. He previously obtained an MBA from the University of San Francisco and has spent quite a bit of time with a number of early stage companies in the past, coaching and helping them grow. Ozan, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Very quick note, I think this pandemic has exposed some significant gaps in our sector here in Canada, and it's I think all the more important that we engage with these types of startups as a group and help them establish and scale. Thank you.
That's well said. Thank you, Ozan. And then finally, Theo Rizopoulos. Theo is works at Theodorus, and he holds a master's degree from the Solvay Business School. He has a good experience in early stage companies in screening and evaluating investment opportunities, and previously worked as a consultant at Roland Berger. Théo.
Merci Cédric pour cette belle introduction. Glad to be here and very excited to hear about the pitches.
Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Cédric. Thank you very, very much for the nice introduction. As you can see, we have an amazing lineup of judges, and it's a great opportunity. And as Ozan highlighted earlier, for empowering the startups. So no matter what happens during the pitches, having this lineup of judges, is already a great achievement for the startups who are presenting today. Speaking of pitches, because unfortunately, ready or not ready, you'll have to pitch. How it's going to happen is really simply, you have 3 minutes to pitch, and then 5 minutes top, 5 minutes of Q&As. And the judges, unfortunately, will have to make the really difficult choice, Munya, to actually select the top winners. It won't be an easy feat. We've seen so many really interesting projects. I don't know how they're going to do, but you have a tough work. Good luck to the judges as well, selecting all those startups. On lance le bal. Je pense que les spectatrices et spectateurs veulent voir ces startups-là. They want to see all the pitches. So let's get going. The first one pitching is Cura Therapeutics. So please join me at welcoming Claudia Penafuerte, CEO and co-founder of Cura Therapeutics. Bonne chance.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Claudia Penafuerte, CEO at Cura Therapeutics. We are developing innovative immunotherapies to treat solid malignancies. Next. Cancer is a leading cause of death globally. Over 90% of all cancer-related deaths are due to solid malignancies. Next. We are developing an immunotherapy platform that harnesses the immune system's natural anti-tumor response to effectively treat and cure cancer. Our lead immunotherapy is a fusion of two proteins derived from the immune system, and the resulting fusion protein gain new pharmacological properties. Next. It activates the immune system response against cancer. It disrupts the tumor blood supply, and this prevents tumor growth and metastasis. It's tumor specific, have low toxicity, it has anti-metastatic properties, and prevent cancer relapse. Currently, there is no treatment on the market that combines all these properties in one single therapeutic. Next. In a mouse model of highly metastatic pancreatic cancer, only our immunotherapy achieved 100% survival rate after 100 days post-tumor implantation, in comparison to 2 FDA-approved immunotherapy for solid malignancies. Next. The oncology drug market is projected to reach over $175 billion in revenue by 2025. The immuno-oncology market is projected to reach over $132 billion. And our target market for only 4 cancer indications is projected to reach over $25 billion. Next. Recent immuno-oncology deals have exceeded 1 to 2 billion for single cytokine asset. Next. We are assembling a team with the expertise to bring our immunotherapy all the way to the bench, from the bench to the clinic. I have a PhD in experimental medicine and over 20 years of experience in cancer immunology and immunotherapy. My co-founder, Colin Horner, have over 20 years of experience in business development, communication, and marketing. And our CDO, Rakesh Verma, have over 15 years of experience in immuno-oncology and cytokine development. Next. Our scientific advisory board combined over 90 years of experience in immuno-oncology, drug development, and FDA regulatory affairs. Next. our major achievement, we closed the pre-seed round of 2 million oversubscribed. Next. We will be raising 10 million for the IND enabling study. Next. And with our immunotherapy, we want to bring hope to patients fighting cancer. We are Cura Therapeutics. Our cause is the cure. And we are open for questions.
Thank you, Claudia. Very, very clear presentation, and we are very, very proud to have you at Admare as part of our Startup Accelerate program. So please stay with us, and I invite Anta, Bessabah, and Cédric to join us for the questions.
All right, over to you.
Thank you. That was a great presentation and very much to the point. A quick question for you. As you look at the ecosystem for your licensing and working with the partners, what are your ideal partners? If you could have your pick of the lot.
That's a great question, and we is part of our business plans once we complete the preclinical studies, the IND enabling study, and even at that point during the IND enabling study, we plan to partnership with bigger pharmaceutical company to help us to bring this immunotherapy to the clinic. That's one possible interaction, and the second one is after first phase of clinical trials. We are currently in conversation with several big biotech company, Geneten, Takeda. We have been in meetings and more than 4 meetings by now that are very interesting to partner for the development, the clinical development of our immunotherapy. And we develop this immunotherapy to this, we complete all these milestones, we're gonna be in better shape to start the partnership.
Claudia, great. Thank you for presenting. It's a very interesting double cytokine fused molecule you are developing. And I think it's also a very competitive space. The space of IL-2 and cytokines. Could you comment a bit on the understanding you have today on the mechanism, or at least whether you know what are the target cells that your cytokines are affecting, and how do you compare that to I'll start simply by IL-2, which is your key comparator, at least on the slides.
That's a great question. And the beauty of this fusion protein is we are fusing a cytokine with a immune receptor. It's not the same receptor for the cytokines, another immune receptor. And this fusion gain new properties that we don't achieve even if we combine the two components. So we are linking several signaling pathways with this fusion protein and targeting several immune system mechanisms against cancer. So compared to IL-2, even all the modifications of IL-2 that are out there target only the IL-2 signaling. So we are targeting the whole lymphocyte compartment and additional signaling pathway that have to be are related to the blood supply to the tumor. So make the immunotherapy very attractive. Because we can achieve several pharmacological properties with one single therapeutic. In addition, have function 254 lower than IL-2. So that's a major problem because high doses of IL-2 are required to break tolerance, and that's what brings a lot of toxicity to the patient. So we already have the advantage to have to work at really lower concentration, and that mitigate the risk of toxicity. In addition, we have preliminary data that we didn't see any hematological toxicity.
Thank you, it's very clear.
I might perhaps have a question for you. So can you comment perhaps on the ability to do partnerships? I know you have conversations ongoing, but your desire, would you rather wait? Would you rather do a partnership now? And how can you develop perhaps as a platform?
And that's a great question. We prefer to, and we already have that conversation with our lead investor, our scientific advisory board, as we achieve certain milestones that we have to, we have planned, the company gain more value. So it's better to wait, complete the pre-IND study, or even in the complete the preclinical stage and the pre-IND study to get like formally partnership. In the meantime, we are talking with several biotech and pharma company that would be interesting in future partnership. And they are also waiting for our next stage to start due diligence process. In number is like Takeda number one.
That's okay.
There are a few others.
Well, I think we're running out of time, so thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and good luck, Claudia. So now I invite Marina Pavlovic-Rivas, the CEO and co-founder of Eli Health, to tell us about their technology and approach.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marina, co-founder and CEO of Eli. Next slide. Hormones are at the root of so many conditions and transitions women experience from puberty to menopause. Yet they remain a black box. We are unlocking that box and empowering women to have access to their hormone data daily. Next slide. Here's how our product works. You take a saliva sample with the cartridge. The device then measures your hormone fluctuation at home, and the app gives you powerful insights. Next slide. We will first address the millions of women who demand hormone-free and non-invasive options to manage their fertility. First, to help couples conceive, and in the future, for contraception as well. Even if conception and contraception are opposite goals, they can both be reached with hormone monitoring. Next slide. It represents massive markets. 1 in 3 couples experience difficulty to conceive, and that number is higher than ever before. For contraception, 30% of women want hormone-free options, but they are missing. In the US, Canada, and Europe alone, that represents addressable markets of 12 billion and 92 billion. Next slide. And we will not stop there. Our mission is to empower women to take control of their health at all stages of their lives. For example, around menopause, knowing hormone fluctuation can help prevent heart diseases, osteoporosis, and even dementia. Next slide. We have no competitor who developed a platform technology able to bridge a massive data gap and empower women across their lives. We do have competitor for specific use cases, including fertility and contraception. For contraception, for example, we have 2 FDA-approved competitors, one of which received its approval last week. We are early movers on this booming market and have unique advantages. Next slide. And our team is uniquely qualified and driven. We have expertise in biomedical engineering, chemistry, medicine, software, and machine learning. Our advisors include leading medtech entrepreneurs and physicians. Next slide. Together, we're moving fast. In a bit more than a single year, we built a prototype, an IP portfolio, and key clinical partnerships. We also closed the first round of 1.9 million from VCs in Hong Kong, New York, and Canada. Because we are on a capital-intensive endeavor, non-dilutive funding is still part of our strategy. Every dollar counts to make our ambitious mission a widespread reality. Next slide. We hope that you will join us to transform women's health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina, and congrats on your journey so far. And I love we're looking for non-dilutive. We keep hustling for non-dilutive, even though we raise funds. Speaking of funds, let's move to the judges. Cédric?
Thank you very much. I'll leave it to the judges to ask the questions.
Great, thank you. I'm happy to start. That was a great presentation. Thank you. And I think you're really addressing a large unmet medical need. One of the questions I had for you is, one of your potential competitors, I might not be pronouncing that right, also appears to have a saliva-based hormone test. And I was just wondering if you could give us some more detail about, your distinguishing factors and your competitive advantage against that potential competitor.
Yes, definitely. INE, it's the only other company in the world who are monitoring hormones in saliva. And our distinction with them, they commercialized, by the way, only a few months ago. So it's a very new product. And our distinction is really the technology. They are using an old technology called lateral flow assays, the same that you would find in the pharmacies for pregnancy kits. But for saliva, so they are limited in terms of what analytes they can measure. They are only measuring progesterone, and they're not able to measure multiple hormones. Our technology, the differentiation is that we can measure multiple hormones and go in much lower concentration. So for hormones like estradiol that are much lower than progesterone, we are able to detect them and to offer multiple hormones instead of one. So that's our main differentiation. And our mission, it's related to that we can empower women across their life and not be specific only to helping couples conceive, which is the case of INE.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'll jump on that. Congratulations first, Marina, for this presentation and for what you have achieved so far. My question is more generalistic. I understand that you pursue here a B2C approach. But when I see this and the sector of fertility, as you have said, there is little innovation in this sector. And when I look at the IVF clinics, I see a consistent offers, but very no innovation. And basically you have to go to 3 cycles to basically optimize the chances to get pregnant. Do you see here a potential to leverage with your technology and what IVF clinics can offer today?
Yes, you mean if we can offer them value as well on top
Yes.
of our... Yes, yes, definitely. One of the clinical partnership we have in place at the moment, it's with one of Canada's leading fertility clinics. And where they see our product being used is mainly to detect the ovulation before IVF treatments. At the moment, they ask women to come at the clinic every 2 days to take a blood sample, which is not a nice experience for the patient. And on the physician side, they would love to have more data. So with our product, they can offer a better experience and have more data points than they have at the moment. So it's definitely on our radar to do such partnerships on top of the direct relationship we're building with the users.
Excellent.
Great, and maybe I'll jump in with another somewhat technical question. With respect to the method of detection that you're using, is there any limitations for the user with respect to certain foods or drinking within a certain amount of time, or can you use your system sort of at any time?
Yes, there are limitations. We are asking user to not eat or drink anything 30 minutes before the measurement. So that's the main limitation, and we will make clear in the application that this is constantly reminded to the user.
Perhaps a last question on my side then. I hear that you are running clinical studies for the moment. What is the endpoints that you guys are going after? Will you be able to show that you can improve the probability of getting pregnant using your technology?
That's not the protocol of the first clinical study. The first one is really to show the product's performance against a gold standard for detecting hormone fluctuation, hormone levels. So it will show that our product detects the same level than the gold standard for saliva and blood in comparison to blood sample as well.
Thank you, Veteo. Briefly.
And then just one more question. You had indicated sort of a price point on your slides. I think it was $45 a month, I think it was. Do you think that you're going to be able to bring that down as you scale? And how dramatically do you think you can bring it down?
Yes, we believe that we will be able to bring that cost down with mass production. It's hard to difficult at the moment. We estimate that we could cut those costs by half potentially, but that's still hard to estimate today. But it's in our mission to try to bring the cost as low as possible to have the more widespread adoption possible.
Well, thank you very much, Betsabé and Theo. Betsabé, that was a question I was about to ask, so we were telepathic on this one. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming pitch with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for our judges and for Cedric. It's definitely not an easy to stop, and that means that the startup create this kind of interest from the judges. That's wonderful. Not an easy job to keep them on time, so thank you very much, Cedric. Next one, we're having Philippe Roche, CEO of Genthera. Philippe, good luck.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm happy to introduce you to Genthera. We're a CRISPR platform company focusing on the biggest challenge in the CRISPR world today, which is how do you deliver the CRISPR protein to the cells that actually require editing. Next slide, please. So the CRISPR world is separated between whether we deliver it as viruses, liposomes, or the protein itself. The protein itself is the most efficacious form. It's the one that forms the edit most safely with the least off target. The question is how do we deliver it? We know all the benefits, but we don't have any good solutions. Next slide. Genthera's solution is the nuclease NAB, which is a fusion between the CRISPR nuclease, which actually cleaves the DNA itself, and the nanobody, nanoantibody that engages the receptors on the cell types that we wish to edit. Once we make it into the cell via the receptor, we get to the nucleus, and then we can pick and choose between disrupting a gene or correcting it as necessary for the therapeutic goal. Next slide. What's the advantage to using CRISPR as a therapeutic? Well, simply put, if you've got the genomic sequence, you can make the guide, and you can truncate the parsing of IDs and targets so that you can actually develop your therapeutic faster. As an example, if we go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. We take the example of the KRAS oncogene. Can we shut down its function rapidly? So in a short space of time, we were able to validate that it is possible to shut down KRAS based on G12S mutants and kill the cancer cells. And we've done that with quite a few other different targets as well. Next slide. The key advantage of being able to target the delivery of the most efficacious form, the protein form of CRISPR, is that it separates you from the delivery platforms of the big three, Intellia, Editas, and CRISPR. We like to be able to create de novo gene editing complexes. So for different types of cancers, and different types of receptors that enable you to target them, different tissues with different receptors to do the same. And this leads to a platform play approach that we believe is compelling, and particularly as there's market activity with companies such as Precision Bio. Next slide, please. So finally, our development path over the last year has been rapid. We've accomplished a huge amount of target ID through RNA-seq. We've worked on our POC with Admiral Bioinnovations and done pretty well in that area, as well as filing our IP platform. We're raising our seed of $2 million currently, and we look forward to utilizing that seed to validate ourselves in vivo. Next slide. Finally, the team, myself, Laurent Ziri, and Sandra Aswale are the core founding team, and we've been incredibly supported by Admiral Bioinnovations over the last 12 months, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration with everyone as we move forward. If you're interested as an investor or as a collaborator, please get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe, for sharing with us your innovative approach in this very highly competitive field. I invite now Anta, Alexandre Leboutier, and Cédric to join us for the questions.
I'm happy to start. Thank you, Philippe. That's a very actually interesting technology. I guess the advantage, from what I understand, depends a lot on your cell specificity and self-delivery. in a cell-specific manner. Can you expand a bit on the nanobody development that you're working on, and any limitations on what receptors they go after, and therefore how cell selective they can be? We can use the example of KRAS cancer cells, for example, if that helps. Thank you.
No problem. Well, let's talk about how we actually use the nanobodies. We have our own internal synthetic libraries that we can screen against different cell receptors, but we're quite happy to buy them from other people, such as the NRC or other groups. Now, the question of antibody targeting is really the recognition of epitopes on particular cell types of interest, that receptor cross-reactivity. So a lot of the similar rules that we know to be true for monoclonal antibody development are also true for nanobody development, and there's set protocols that you can validate the sensitivity, the accuracy, and the binding affinity for those molecules. When we consider how do we target cancer, because that's really what we believe CRISPR is most appropriate for in this context, is the question most aptly answered by saying, let's take our examples from ADCs, so antibody drug conjugates. There's a plethora of different targets there, from EGFR, HER2, all the way through to other such things as mesothelin, that can be targeted and effectively directed towards cancers. So if you're desiring to get to cancers, those target prioritizations are what we're currently focused on. Once you get into the cells, then it's a question of selecting the most efficacious guide to achieve the edit that shuts down the function of the oncogene. And in the case of KRAS, G12S and G12C and G12D, you can make specific guides, so it's only going to edit the oncogene, and that gives you real precision. I hope that's answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roche. I really loved the presentation. You went straight into the topic, explaining the problem. Some other pitches take 7-8 slides just to explain it, so I think you nailed it right on that aspect. One thing that could be improved, and you could answer those questions, is sometimes you mention results that you got, but you don't provide a source or a publication. So I'm just pointing out plus 90% homology direct repair versus 25% on CRISPR.
Yep.
So you should provide source. So maybe you can explain 30 seconds on why you get such an amazing result for that part.
Let's talk about that publication, actually. It's in the CRISPR journal. A quick Google, if anyone's interested, please go and read the paper. It's a lot of fun. Thank you very much for that, Alexandre. I will take that recommendation going forward.
So always put your reference, especially if it's in the CRISPR journal. The second recommendation on the comparative cost of drug development, let's say a 6-year process, and with your technology going to a 9-month process from $250 million to $1 million, the promise of value that you're making is, I would say, too good to be true. Investors are dreamers, but they have experience. So again, there might be other factors why the first phase is so long. And maybe you can provide some context on why you're so optimistic on those delays.
Well, the reason that I'm optimistic is twofold. It's sort of supported by the preclinical paths that have been followed in the CRISPR companies. If you look at the development of the Liebers preclinical, it was incredibly short, incredibly fast, and they got into the clinic once they pitched into that. So that's the Editas example. If you look at the ability to parse tractable targets in discovery, I think we're all familiar with CRISPR screening for that purpose. You know, at the end of the day, Montreal is home to Repar that have leveraged that particular technique massively. And it's definitely passed down their developmental paths as it has for others. With CRISPR, the ability to go directly to the genomic sequence and use that to target the ablation or correction of a gene product, it's somewhat more manageable in terms of the complexity. So for instance, if we're saying target one gene, let's say we're looking at maybe 40 or 50 guides, you can parallelize that in your development and parse it very rapidly, versus having to screen, as I did many, many years ago, small molecules in a combinatorial fashion. That's a big library to go through versus 40 or 50 guides to find the efficacious one. And that's why I substantiate that claim.
Well,
thank you, Dr. Roche.
We're running out of time. So Philippe, thank you very much. Perhaps I had some questions and you could answer them separately on the intellectual property landscape of CRISPR. But Philippe, again, thank you very much. Ada and Alexandre, thank you.
Thank you all. Now it's my pleasure to invite James Doyle, the co-founder and CEO of Modelis, who will tell us more about their innovative platform.
Hi, everyone. My name is James Doyle. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Modelis, a Montreal-based biotech that's accelerating drug discovery for rare genetic disorders. Next. So what if I told you that these animals, these little worms and fish, had the potential to accelerate drug discovery for human disorders? I know what you're probably thinking because I've heard it all before. I know it sounds crazy. What's fascinating is that we share 70% of our genes with these animals. So 70% of what makes your cells and my cells function are also found in these worms. Next. So for genetic researchers like us, we know that if we have a genetic mutation that causes a specific disease in humans, and if that gene also exists in these animals, we can use genetic engineering techniques such as CRISPR-Cas9 to mimic patient-specific mutations in them. In other words, let's generate worms and fish with ALS or myopathies like Duchenne muscular dystrophy and use these patient avatars to better study the disorders and to find drugs that can fix them. Next. While it does sound crazy, it's actually already worked in the context of ALS, the ice bucket challenge disorder. So our co-founder, Dr. Alex Parker, who's also a professor at the University of Montreal, generated these sick ALS worms and found that pimozide, an old antipsychotic drug, is effective at improving symptoms in ALS worm models. And this was successfully then tested in ALS patients as well, in the first example of worm to human translational drug discovery. Next. And at Modelis, we're focused on rare genetic disorders, a group of more than 7,000 disorders that collectively affect 1 in 12 people worldwide. And since 95% of these conditions are uncured and have largely unmet medical needs, there's an urgency to speed up therapeutic discovery for them and address this large and underaddressed market. But these diseases are challenging since we don't know much about them. We usually only know the genes that cause them. And as a result, it's very difficult to target a drug against them. However, we get around this and screen unbiasedly on what matters the most, the symptoms and the phenotypes, to first find drugs that work and then figure out how they work next. And at Modelis, we believe that the best partners to do this are the patients themselves. And that's why we empower patient foundations and by partnering with them all the way through the drug discovery process through venture philanthropy, whereby these R&D programs generate our novel IP to then sell or license off. On the other hand, we can leverage the potential of our platform by testing as many small molecules as we can that can quickly reach the bedside. And Modelis has a unique library of molecules ranging from approved drugs to exclusive and private molecules from our unique pharmaceutical partnerships. And we're committed and passionate, and we know that we can make a difference in this rare disease space. And we've developed our team to support us in this endeavor through an expansion of our management team to include clinical expertise and our advisory board with experienced pharmaceutical executives to support us on our growth. Next, and thank you.
Next, and thank you. So thank you very much, James. Let's move to the judges with Michael Mee and Alexandre de Boutiat.
Awesome. Alexandre, maybe I'll jump in first here. James, thanks for the presentation. Really nice insights and sort of really interesting platform. What would be really interesting to understand, you sort of highlight this world of rare genetic disease, 7,000 plus diseases. How do you think about prioritizing that massive space in terms of where you want to focus your platform? And maybe in particular, you have a few ways of creating value for your company, whether that's partnering those assets out versus keeping those for internal development. How do you think about weighing those factors in that prioritization as well?
Yeah, so the prioritization of these disorders is obviously incredibly important to us, not just from a scientific standpoint for what's feasible with our platform, because that's probably a separate discussion we could have, but from the business standpoint, obviously, there are many rare disorders, but there are rare disorders that only affect a small handful of people. And so being able to find drugs that have enough commercial potential is very interesting for us. And so that's part of our feasibility when we assess some of these programs. So when we assess our targeting a new disorder. So typically we'll focus on the genetic feasibility, so the scientific feasibility, but then look at what is the addressable market, what is the size of the patient population, are there mutations in one gene that cause a spectrum of disorders, so where any potential therapies that we could find could then be repurposed or repositioned for other disorders. For example, mutations in a gene called LMN or LMNA, lamin, cause a rare spectrum of disorders all the way from rare, ultra rare, severe myopathies through to very mild cardiomyopathies, but that affect a much larger population. So being able to target some of these ultra rare disorders, but that then would have broader implications or broader applications is part of our criteria and our process, our selection process. Your second question though on partnerships, could you repeat that part a bit?
I guess I'm curious of the world of indications and diseases that you're contemplating and prioritizing, how you then also decide what you want to fully develop internally and capture that value from, sort of investing in those development efforts versus partnering them out and selling off those assets to others.
Right. So part of what we are trying to do is take advantage as well of the many accelerated pathways available for rare disease and orphan drug products. So for maybe some of the rare, and that's also part of our evaluation criteria. So seeing how far could we take this on a smaller budget. So how could taking advantage of all the regulatory accelerated pathways, moving through early stage drug development, regulatory, and then early stage clinical. And so for some disorders, it might make more sense for us to do that ourselves because we would be able to do so with a very limited budget and very limited capital and operate clinical trials in a very efficient manner. But for other disorders, for other disorders or other indications or where there are existing players in the field, it might make more sense to license those out or to sell those off at an earlier stage, since there might be partners willing to develop those faster.
Great, thank you.
I'll jump in. Two different pitch decks. So we received one pitch deck that I would say was very long, lots of text, very few images, not that good. And the one that you deliver now, very visual. The comment I will make is you're trying to educate people on the domain and not your specific product. And I think that's the angle you should take. But I like the visuals, just some general comment. The question I have for you is, there have been a lot of movement in AI drug discovery, especially in Citro. They raised $400 million 2 days ago. How would you react to that? And is there some lesson learned that you can apply in your venture?
Yeah, so part of us as biologists and not computer scientists, I love what AI does, and I definitely see the potential it has in this space, but it remains in silico. But what we're trying to do and what we have on our radar and what we hope is in the not too distant future as well is to use AI to augment our own capacity, our own throughput. So whether that's using AI to help us better identify compounds or predict or generate train models that could then help us predict new drugs, new more effective drugs. That's all part of what we're trying to develop internally and harness that power to leverage AI for our greater success.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, James. Thank you, Michael and Alexandre.
Thank you very much. Well, great questions and amazing answers. So moving forward, and as you know, it takes an ecosystem to build a startup. We have Plaque, who has a beautiful experience through going through accelerators such as Santec, District 3, and others, Cooperaton, and today in front of the judges. So good luck.
Thank you. Next slide, please. What is this? Next slide. This is the leading cause of death and disability in the world today. Next slide. This costs the healthcare system billions of dollars each year. Next slide. And currently there's no accurate method to predict whether this is going to affect any of us. This is a plaque. Now, a plaque can form in any of the arteries that provide blood to your heart and to the brain. And if the blockage is significant enough, it can cause a heart attack or stroke. So let me tell you how we at Plaque Inc. are using AI to better predict and prevent heart attacks and strokes. Currently in clinical practice, ultrasound is routinely used to assess solely the degree of artery blockage that occurs because of the plaque. If there's high blockage in the arteries, then the plaque is removed. If not, then it stays in the body. But after decades of research, we now know that blockage alone is an incomplete determinant of heart attack and stroke risk. Next slide, please. Using blockage alone leads to inaccurate diagnoses, causing unjustified risks to the patient through either unnecessary surgeries or possibly missed surgeries, placing a huge financial burden on the healthcare system. Next slide. What we now know is that plaques have a very complex composition, which is a far better indicator of heart attack and stroke risk compared to blockage alone. Next slide. However, to date, we do not have any accurate tool to clinically assess plaque composition non-invasively. Next slide. So we are building Sonoplaque, a platform that revolutionizes how we diagnose these patients through a personalized medicine approach. We take an input image like an ultrasound, run it through our machine learning algorithms, extract those complex plaque features, and provide physicians with an accurate risk score for heart attacks and strokes. Next slide. Having this holistic approach leads to more accurate risk stratification, optimal selection of patients for treatments that will reduce unnecessary surgeries and reduce the burden that plaques have on the healthcare system. We have access to the largest biobank of its kind in North America, which includes more than 6,000 images obtained from 600 patients, as well as ultrasound and histological images from the same patient, both of which are very necessary in order to create a highly accurate diagnostic tool using our proprietary methods. Furthermore, we take a personalized medicine approach by including clinical information, blood markers, and genetic signatures all into our algorithms. Our commercialization strategy is fourfold. We will enter the research market first, which includes drug clinical trials, and attempt to achieve Class 2 designation using the FDA's 510(k) path in order to enter the clinical diagnostics market. And we will achieve global reach with our product by partnering with major ultrasound manufacturers. We have a very diverse team in our backgrounds and experiences made up of cardiovascular researchers, AI engineers, clinician scientists, and business advisors, all who can help achieve product market fit. We have established an essential collaboration with the Research Institute of the McGill University Health Center and secured more than $300,000 to date in non-dilutive funding. So be on the lookout for an MVP this year. Next slide.
Thank you, Kashif. Very nice projects that shows again the power of AI in developing innovative approaches to help clinicians and patients. I invite now Jennifer Hamilton, Austin Walters, and Cedric to join us for the questions.
Great. Thank you, Kashif. Great presentation. And I just have some questions around how you drive adoption of a technology like this, which of course looks very interesting. Can you tell us what kind of clinical studies you might do that would drive adoption?
Definitely. So I think there's two parts to adoption. First, of course, is a network that we have. And we're lucky, like I mentioned, to have a very strong collaboration with a few clinician scientists at the McGill University Health Center. And we've already made some headway by contacting collaborators from around the world. And these are clinicians, ultrasonographers, researchers, and surgeons. In terms of what you mentioned about the clinical studies, there really is two parts. First, of course, is the validation of the technical product itself. So whether or not we can actually predict the stroke or heart attack happening based off of those plaque features and compare it with the gold standard today, which is just using blockage alone. And could we have prevented those events retrospectively? And then the second study would be more so a clinical study that looks at cardiovascular events. So not just necessarily heart attacks and strokes, but we're also talking about hospitalizations, long-term care facilities, for example, symptoms, and other clinical visits.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kashif, and great progress up to this point. I have a question around data acquisition. So you have access to this large database of content today. as you continue training your algorithms and implement this, are you able to acquire, interpret the image, and provide clinical decision support at the edge? Do you anticipate being able to do that, or would it require a separate workflow and process for cardiology labs or primary care settings?
Wait, I hope I'm understanding your question correctly, but if I can clarify, so yeah, our data is used to right now train and validate several of the features that we're looking at. That data will be used to, yes, like you mentioned, to provide more information to the physician. So not just blockage alone, because we know that blockage is a very important determinant of risk, but as well as these other plaque features, and as well as other clinical information, biomarkers, et cetera. That being said, although we do have quite a large biobank, the data is only from patients in Montreal. So this leads to potential for algorithmic bias. So in the future, when we generate these larger collaborations, we're hoping to have a more diverse data set from institutions across the world. So then we can also include things like sex, gender, culture, or ethnicities as well into the algorithms.
Mm-hmm. Kashif, just back to the question of adoption and driving adoption. What kind of doctors will use this in the final product, and will they be reimbursed for using this technology?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. We spoke with a few physicians from different institutions, and it's in fact the physicians that do this kind of work falls under different mandates. So we have the vascular surgeon that might do it. Sometimes the neurosurgeon might look at these images, the ultrasonographer, and of course we also have the researchers that are involved in managing plaque progression through perhaps drug clinical trials or other similar trials. So whether or not they get reimbursement, to be honest, I'm not sure of that answer, but it's important to know that there's a lot of key stakeholders in this field.
Thank you.
Well, perhaps you could comment on what the manufacturers of medical devices like intravascular ultrasound or FFR devices are trying to do, and how your technology will fit into those other technologies that currently are used clinically.
Definitely. So I'll clarify, we're not necessarily a medical or physical product. We're simply a post-image processing software, or if not a software, algorithms. So we're not trying to drastically change the landscape in the way which things are done today, but rather be a simple click on the softwares that already exist in order to get that extra analysis to help physicians be more confident in their decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Jennifer, Austin, other questions?
The data, does it have to be cloud-based, or could it be a local thing so that they do a scan and they can see a number right away that indicates the risk?
Yeah, so currently we are local, but in the future, I'm assuming when we have much larger data sets from different institutions, we'll likely have to move towards a cloud-based platform.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
And is the scan exactly what they do now?
Exactly. So you can either take perhaps a longitudinal section or a cross-sectional image of the plaque. So either way, we can use both of those images into our algorithms.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Kashif, yeah. Jennifer, Austin, thank you so much.
Thank you. And now it's the turn of Ida Derish, the CEO and founder of GeneAware, to present us their approach and business model.
Hi, everyone. It's amazing to be here. Next slide. I'd like for you to meet Amy Reed, who doctors assumed had fibroids, which are uterine tumors that affect 70% of women. So logically, doctors decided to remove them through minimally invasive means. Next slide. But in Amy Reed's case, she actually had a deadly cancer, and the surgical technique was directly responsible for spraying these cancerous cells throughout her body. So as a direct response, the FDA actually issued an advisory ban on these minimally invasive procedures, which resulted in a surge in preventative and invasive hysterectomies, which are the removal of a patient's uterus. Now, a large proportion of those hysterectomies were completely unnecessary, resulting in $700 million worth of healthcare system costs, whether it be for prolonged hospitalizations, complications, or post-op disability. So, next slide. So the reality today is that patients are unfortunately subjected to longer wait times, uncertainty, and a poor health outcome. Next slide. After interviewing 43 doctors from leading hospitals across North America, we validated the clear unmet need that, next slide, that there is no pre-surgical biopsy for at-risk uterine tumors in women. Next slide. So as a response, GynoWare offers LeoGuide, which is the first medical instrument that allows for a visualization as well as a transvaginal biopsy of suspicious uterine fibroids, yielding a tumor sample to diagnose and thus clearing patients for a safer, personalized, and often minimally invasive treatment plan. Next slide. So overall, LeoGuide will enable the triage of patients via diagnosis, will reduce unnecessary surgery costs and wait times, and most importantly, will offer patients ease of mind. Now, next slide. With LeoGuide, our patient-centric vision means that we're in an untapped market where the competitive landscape is relatively barren. And what I mean by that is that most providers focus on creating minimally invasive treatment. Next slide. Whereas we actually focus on diagnostic biopsies, which will reduce the fear of using those minimally invasive treatments in the first place. And we have the advantage of addressing the discrepancy between gynecology as well as different medical fields. Next slide. Now, we're competing at a high value market with a niche entry point at $38.7 million, which targets all 2,500 doctors who treat the most at-risk patients. And with the uterine fibroid therapeutic market being on the rise, as well as our tool scalability through the sale of single-use biopsy systems or needles, we envision penetrating the $515 market that encompasses all gynecologists in North America. And as a final kind of slide, next slide, I would love to introduce our great team who's trying to make this a reality for women with the world's most common gynecological disease. So we have our wonderful CSO to who we owe the success of our interviewing efforts, our CMO who has done cadaver tests, our two technical leads who are trying to make LeoGuide a reality, and myself, I'm trying to secure as much funding as possible for GynoWare. Thank you so much, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Aida, and love the energy, the enthusiasm, the ambition, and the social impact behind it. So thank you very much. Great presentation. Let's get to our judges now with the Betsabeh and Michael Mee, and of course, Cedric.
Hi, Aida. Thank you for the presentation. I have a very quick question first, and it's about how is this different from the endometrial biopsies that I read about it a little bit more about what John Hopkins has been doing the past few years. Also, as a woman, I found it quite fascinating just reading your pitch deck. So if you could talk a little bit about that and also who else is working in this space, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so this is honestly it's a great question because essentially the big difference between the biopsies that we're going to be doing, so we're going to be biopsying the myometrium, which is muscle tissue, and the endometrial biopsies that are already performed. So for endometrium, it's much more on the surface and it's much more comparable to skin that we see on the surface of our hand, for example. So it's much less of a deep biopsy, whereas we're hoping to penetrate much deeper into the tissue and have a reliable sample that will tell us whether this patient has cancer, which is in a very rare kind of scenario, or if she's cleared for minimally invasive treatments, such as abdominal surgeries that will leave her kind of leaving the hospital the same day. So that's kind of the main difference. And right now, there's no one working on our specific myometrial biopsies because the main challenges are essentially access. It's very hard to reach these large tumors that can grow up to 20 centimeters and essentially deform the uterus. And I think that's where our competitive advantage comes in because we're developing, I'm developing a technology that that is going to, that is going to essentially kind of reduce that as a problem.
And what's the percentage of women that are actually impacted amongst everybody who goes for the biopsy that are going to need the much deeper tissue biopsy?
So right now, there are 360,000 women who undergo hysterectomies for fibroids every year. a very small percentage of those women have the cancer. So essentially, I would say that around 30% of those will require a deeper biopsy that we would offer. However, I would like to stress the fact that every single one of those women who undergoes a hysterectomy should be getting a biopsy, because whether the tumor is large and requires that kind of much more deep technology to penetrate it, or whether we kind of go with our tool as well and penetrate less deep, it could still be cancerous. We don't know. There's very little kind of, there's very few guidelines that that can tell you whether it's cancer or not.
Thank you.
Ida, thank you so much for the presentation. You highlight the validation that you've done speaking to clinicians on the unmet need. A few questions on maybe validation of implementation of this technology. So firstly, to what extent have you spoken to pathologists and their ability to use this type of biopsy material to actually make that diagnosis? My understanding is you may need multiple biopsies per location, and can your device do that? Additionally, to what extent have you validated implementation with gynecologists? Are they willing to do this procedure? And what type of training would be required that might be a limitation to driving and commercialization of your product?
Okay, thank you. Those are two great questions. I'll try to answer them as best I can. So first, we did talk to pathologists. We do have to continue talking with them and kind of working with them hand in hand, because they've provided us with kind of basic guidelines of what they would want in terms of tissue quantity, tissue quality, and integrity of what we're going to give them. So essentially, we're going to be having this kind of conversation, ongoing conversation with them as we develop our prototype, to show them what we're able to get as a tissue and receive some kind of feedback of whether we need to reassess our hardware. So on the gynecologist side, so we've talked to a couple of gynecologists, and we were mostly focusing on validating the need itself. However, I kind of did sneak in a couple of questions about the implementation, and I'm pretty happy to say that, we have received purchasing interest. Of course, not in writing. It was mostly just a face-to-face talk, but we have received kind of interest from key opinion leaders from here, right from this hospital at the MUHC. So we would start testing it locally, and then hopefully expand through word of mouth from these KOLs who have contacts, elsewhere in the States and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Maybe really quickly, do you have a sense of also the threshold, either positive or positive and negative predictive power that can be driven from this type of diagnostic that would be required for adoption?
I unfortunately don't off the top of my head. I know this is a conversation that, again, we would have to take up with pathologists, because they're the ones who are assessing the tissues post-surgically right now. And we would have to match and even beat that kind of threshold pre-surgically with the few samples that we give them. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Betsabe, Michael, and Ida. It's great to see a company led by women, as with a few others we had today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I love the diversity and I love the subject, but great answer. I think you have a beautiful journey ahead raising funds, so great job. Next one is Perceive AI, and I have the pleasure to welcome Christian Dansereau, co-founder and CEO of Perceive AI. Bonne chance.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christian Dansereau. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Perceive AI. We are a precision medicine company transforming biopharma through intelligent patient selection. We model patient and their disease to create specific signatures to forecast how they will evolve in time and respond to treatment. We currently are developing solutions for neurological and cardiovascular disease. Next slide, please. So patients are diverse, and clinical trials fail to account for patient heterogeneity, which has a lot of problems in clinical trials and potentially higher risk of failure of those trials. Next slide, please. So traditional clinical trials have very crude inclusion-exclusion criteria, and they don't account for disease evolution, which leads to poor patient selection and a lot of downstream effects, among which high failure rate, massive cost, long trial duration, and low treatment efficacy ultimately of these drugs once they are on the market. So by targeting a better quality of the patients that are selected in those trials may have impact on all of these four aspects. Next slide, please. So we've devised a biomarker discovery platform to predict patient outcome in response to treatment, to actually address that and try to forecast how these patients will evolve in time. And we do that combining multiple modalities to really have an holistic view of the patient and be in a good position to assess how those patients may evolve in the near term future. Next slide, please. So our first product is in Alzheimer's disease. It's a cognitive decline enrichment tool, which is cognitive decline is the main outcome of these types of clinical trials. And we've been able to demonstrate that compared to a more traditional selection process, our enriched population is able to boost the power of the study, reducing the duration of the trial by a year, which can translate into savings to about $68 million for a phase 3 trial. Next slide, please. So our current two therapeutic areas are in neurological and cardiovascular disease. Our most mature product is in Alzheimer's disease. It's a well-validated tool across multiple data sets. And most recently, we had our first revenue with VTV Therapeutics, where we again replicated our results on their phase 3 trial. We are now expanding into cardiovascular disease, mainly in post-acute coronary syndrome, as well as developing tools for specific drug response to two compounds in partnership with the Montreal Heart Institute and Dalcor Pharmaceutical. Next slide, please. So our multidisciplinary team has extensive expertise in machine learning and its application to precision medicine. Our advisors bring their significant experience to the team in computer science, strategy, biopharma, Alzheimer's disease, and cardiovascular disease. We are fortunate enough to count among our advisors Dr. Yeshua Benjo, the director of the Mila Institute and deep learning pioneer. Next slide, please. We are currently raising $2 million US to expand our team, operationalize our platform to access prospective trials, as well as grow our data network with pharma and hospitals. Next slide, please. So please join us as we transform data from diverse patients with complex disease into actionable insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Very interesting approach that can have the potential to transform future clinical trial in very challenging indications. So I invite now Theo, Austin, and Cedric to join us for the period of questions.
Thank you very much, Christian, and this is fantastic. My first question is, which digital biomarkers are you finding to be most important or contributory relative to what's happening today?
So it's really a mix, actually. Each of those single biomarkers are not enough to have a good prognostic value. So it's really by combining them that you can start to tease out actually like more value in terms of prognosis. I would say that cognitive assessment as well as imaging are key features. Imaging, MRI, as well as molecular imaging are very useful, especially for Alzheimer's disease. Obviously, the sets of biomarkers may differ, obviously, for cardiovascular applications. So those are the main ones, yeah.
Perhaps to jump on that, thank you, Christian, for the presentation. One question for me is quite simple, but the data you're using right now, are they coming from the pharma, I guess? But are they also coming from other sources?
Yeah, so from multiple sources, public and private sources, most of those data sets have been acquired across North America and Europe. So we have multiple sites that have acquired that data longitudinally. They are a mix of pharma data as well as large initiatives that have acquired data for multiple years.
Okay, perhaps another question on my side. Regarding the business model, when I look at your solutions, you have plenty ones that you can consider. You can you can basically provide a service to a pharma. You can license your software so that they can use it internally. You can even opt for co-development programs on the trials on which you're running the optimization. Have you already given a bit of thought on which one you would like to pursue?
Yeah, so for the moment, co-development and helping actually the selection process in active clinical trials is our two main focus. So for the models that we currently have that are ready for deployment, like the intent is actually to sell it as a service to improve the quality of the clinical trials. And we can also leverage our database to create new biomarkers in partnership with pharma. That will create more IP and more data as well as we grow.
Christian, I really like the ring of precision trial recruiting. It just sounds good. I have a question about, it seems like you're improving the quality of selection, patient selection, but perhaps reducing the quantity, maybe. So this is my question is, does this slow down the trial recruitment process at all? And would that be palatable for the pharma companies for whom this is, from what I understand, already a problem? It's hard for them to find enough patients depending on the trial. So if you're becoming even more specific and precise, does that pose a problem on the quantity side for them?
Yeah, it's actually an extremely good question. So the short answer is no. You can potentially see it as basically you would have recruited 1,000 subjects. We identify 300 of them that are probably not relevant for your trial because they will not exhibit the signs that are relevant to demonstrate that your drug is effective. So you can cut down those 300 and just retain the 700. So basically it would take the same number of time for recruiting and we would preserve a similar power of the study. If you want to increase the power of the study, then we can recruit 1,000 subjects. Obviously, it's going to take you a little bit more time to recruit those individuals, but you will have a higher quality clinical trial, higher power, so you can potentially reduce the duration of your trial. So maybe the time spent on recruitment may be a bit longer because you have to pull more people, but in the end, your actual trial and the cost associated with it will be shorter.
Christian, I'm going to step in. Perhaps you can comment on other competitive approaches, companies like Owkin, for instance, in France and others trying to address the same problem.
Yeah, so it's actually a very good point. So Owkin is more provide a platform, and they are more focused on cancer. We are more focused on complex disease that are multifactorial. So that's one of the differentiator. Another differentiator with other competitors are trying to improve the clinical trial process are like synthetic arms providers. So they are providing replacing control subjects with synthetic subjects. That doesn't improve the quality of the trial. It's just replacing subjects. So you can reduce a little bit the cost of your trial on the control side, but you have to keep in mind that the cost of recruiting a control versus a treatment arm subjects is much lower and therefore has less advantage.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Theo. And thank you, Austin.
Thank you. And now let's hear Frédéric Plourde, the co-founder and CEO of Statera Medical. Bonne chance.
Our arms, the most frequently used body member in our lifetime. Imagine having to suffer every time we use them. Next. Actually, a third of the world's population is suffering from heart disease. In North America only, it's more than 170,000 people suffering so much that they need a new shoulder right now. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, great. Unfortunately, 30% of patients living with an artificial shoulder will come back to the operating room due to prosthesis problem. Those additional surgeries cost more than $1 billion to our healthcare system every year. Next slide. Today, only two types of prostheses are available on the market: the reverse prosthesis and the anatomic prosthesis. Next. More than a half of shoulder replacement are done using the reverse prosthesis, which causes two recurring problems. First, it restricts patients' range of motion. On the other hand, it also leads to skeletal wear. In any case, 1 in 3 patients will suffer a major complication within a year following his surgery. Next slide. This clearly indicates the need for prostheses that provide a complete range of motion, no mechanical complications, and which eliminates the needs for surgical revision. At Statera Medical, we develop a next generation shoulder prosthesis that keeps patients out of the hospital. Hi everyone, my name is Frédéric Plourde, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Statera Medical. Next slide. I'm excited to introduce the TeroLife, which is the first of its kind in the orthopedic world. Our prosthesis is designed to prevent bone collision and significantly augment range of motion by 55%. Next slide. We offer a solution to clinical unmet needs not solved by our competitors. Our unique proposition is a prosthesis that provides freedom of motion, just like a healthy joint. Next slide. More and more shoulder diseases are treated by prosthesis. We take advantage of an underestimated niche market. As the shoulder was lower in big company priorities, next slide. The last mechanical innovation is dated from 1985 and still presents bad functional gains for the patient. Next slide. By 2024, we intend to enter the market and replace reverse prosthesis. This represents a $6.5 billion opportunity. Next slide. We already have our provisional patent, which secure our 2 most innovative technologies. It also opened the door to other patents on the way. Next slide. Our dedicated teams works with surgeons and advisors being in the shoulder and medtech industry for many years. We've got all the right ingredients to disrupt the orthopedic industry. Next slide. So thank you.
Marina, rockstar.
Thank you.
Gina, really good. Really, really good. Yeah, merci Frédéric. On passe au jury.
Frédéric, thank you. That was a great presentation, an interesting product. I'm just going to jump right in. You said that you have your provisional patents.
Right.
Is the patent on the specific technology? I'm going to jump into the future here. Is that particular technology, can it be applied to other parts of the body?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thank you, Azan. Yeah, we plan to also implement the same technology in the hip. So that's also a really good, interesting joint for our technology. So that's currently in our patent pathway to introduce also the hip articulation. Yeah.
Hey, Frederic, appreciated your presentation and your focus on the shoulder, one of my favorite parts. My understanding is that this would be for older patients to replace the reverse shoulder procedure, or could it be used in younger patients as well?
Yeah, really good question. That's one of our biggest concern. We want to address a prosthesis that's also made for younger people, because actually that's a really huge problem in the industry. The prosthesis have a lifetime of 5 or 10 years. So it tends to be for the older people, but our objective is to offer a prosthesis that will have 20 years of lifetimes for younger patient and more active patient.
Okay, and sticking with the older patients, would it work with osteoporotic bone as well?
Yeah, exactly. It's particularly designed for arthritis and also muscular tear. It's also well known when you use the reverse prosthesis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm going to jump back into the business part of it. Could you expand on the path to market? Where are you right now as investors? What's the next stage, and when will you be in market, and how will that path look like and impact your current investors?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. We actually complete our proof of concept. So our objective is to prove on humans that we offer the same gain as we measure in laboratory on a bench test. And yeah, so we're currently at 75% of our compelling proof of concept, where we simulate the range of motion of the implant on computers. We also make some tests on a bench test that we have in the laboratory. And about when we will finish that, it's planned to June 2021, where we will start our first cadaver testing with our doctors here in Quebec. And when
just kind of following up on my question, when do you think, I'm going to talk into the future again, let's assume that you're in market, etc. What's going to trigger your exit? Is there an exit?
If I'm well understanding the question, I think that having a partnership with a big player that we already discussed with them, just for your information, that could be a great interest for us to having like the marketing forces and all the sales forces that I would say Stryker or Exitech actually have. So yeah, that's a kind of interesting partnership that we can do, but we want to like take a big part of the market and just like pushing our technologies as far as we can.
Can you tell us a little bit about manufacturing?
Yeah, sure. Actually, we made some estimation with the Quebec manufacturer, and it will cost around $3,000 to manufacture the implant. But actually, we plan also to just like keep all the expertise inside the enterprise and produce our own implant and distribute it as the first challenge for us. Yeah.
So what do you worry about most in starting a company and driving this forward?
I think it's a really big, it's a big player industry. Like the orthopedic industry is led by big player, but we have so much great team and so much interesting expertise. We have all we need to like make our place in this industry. So I will say I'm optimistic, and we will do it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the optimism.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for the optimism, Frédéric. That's great. Thank you, Jennifer and Ozan. Thank you so much.
Well, entrepreneurship means optimism. So absolutely, I love that. And absolutely, Cédric, you're absolutely right. So we are almost out of pitches, but we still have to. So next one, I would welcome Nancy, co-founder and CEO of Effervescence. Nancy, bonne chance.
Hello. Yes. Hello, this is Nancy Schwimm-Pruner. I thought I was supposed to see my pitch deck on the screen. Okay. Hello, can the team hear me? Hello, Mark, I do not see my pitch. Yes. Okay, you can see me. All right, I don't see my pitch deck. I thought I was going to see my pitch deck. Hi, I'm Nancy Schwimm-Pruner, CEO of Effervescence. We are an innovative diagnostic platform using DNA biosensor technology. Next slide, slide 2, please. We are a versatile and multiplexing capable platform to detect many different analytes directly in challenging specimen types, such as whole blood or saliva. The device from a customer perspective will look very similar to a glucose testing system with a consumable that's got an embedded electrochemical sensor. The consumable, after sample is put on it, is inserted into a reader, and the patient sees the result in a mobile application. At the heart, next slide, please, slide number 3. At the heart of our technology it's a very disruptive DNA-based nanosensor. So instead of like in a glucose sensor where the electrode is coated with enzymes that react with sugar, We have DNA molecules attached to the sensor, which are hybridized to a second DNA strand, which interacts with the analyte of interest. This is a very similar technology to that used by Genmark, which was just purchased 3 days ago by Roche for $1.8 billion. Our technology solves multiple issues. It works in whole blood or saliva. It's very cheap. It gives results that are as accurate as a lab, and we can detect multiple different types of analytes at the same time. Next slide, slide number 4, please. Last year during the COVID pandemic, we worked on a detection of COVID-19 antibodies in blood. So this could be used to understand the development of immunity after a recent infection or after vaccination. Next slide. Antibody serological testing is a very large market. The regulatory approvals are very well understood, especially under the emergency use authorization, and the reimbursements are very attractive. The competition in this space is with lateral flow, similar to a pregnancy strip test, or the central lab ELISA test, which cannot be run at the point of care. Next slide. The advantage of our technology is that from the user perspective, it is very simple. With the lateral flow serology tests, you normally need to, after poking the finger, you need to mix with buffer, and it's complicated. You have to wait for a certain amount of time before the user reads the lines, and it's very subjective. There are some lateral flow tests that use directly whole blood and do not require the mixing with buffers, but those require significant volumes of finger prick blood. Next slide, please, slide number 7. So the advantage of our technology using the patented electrochemical DNA detection is that we can detect a wide range of biomarkers. We're able to do so in as little as 5 microliters of blood or saliva. The results are quantitative and digital and available within 5 minutes, and there's no need for results interpretation by the user. Next slide, please, slide number 8. We have proof of concept for the COVID-19 detection, both on the assay chemistry side, showing detection of antibodies in mouse serum in mice that were inoculated with COVID-19, as well as a prototype consumable that has the embedded functionalized electrode. Our funding strategy is that we are moving this technology forward through non-dilutive grants. We have one grant for the development of heart failure biomarker detection. We have the grant for the COVID antibody assay development. We have a grant for using AI to enhance the signal to noise ratio from the raw data. And we are a member of Syntech. We are currently looking for angels and VC investors, and we are very excited that we're in discussions right now, very recently, with 2 European companies that are very interested in our technology for a unique use case that we had not anticipated. This is in the forensic field of roadside drug screening testing. There are a number of key advantages to our technology for this, and we are in discussions with a term sheet for both a manufacturer as well as a commercial distributor in this field. Next slide. The team is very strong. We bring both the scientific expertise of the inventor himself as a co-founder. We have clinical expertise, business development, myself as CEO, and Richard Williams, CTO. We are in Boston, so we are a Boston, Montreal-based startup. We have over 70 patents between the team members, most of which have made it to products that have generated billions of dollars of revenue. And we have the experience of bringing very early stage innovative technology all the way to products. With our recent discussions with the strategic partners, we have both a manufacturing path and a commercial path forward that's of a lower regulatory burden than classical diagnostics. So we are very excited to go on this journey to bring a amazing breakthrough biosensor technology.
Thank you, Nancy. Without any delay, to let some time for our judges, I invite Kelly, Alexandre, and Cedric for the period of questions. Thanks a lot.
And just before we start, Kelly, we saw all of your slides. We're going to have to shorten the period of questions to 3 minutes because we ran over. So over to the judges, to Kelly and Alexandre. Thank you, Nancy.
I'll quickly start. Amazing product. I was fortunate to see Alexi demo a while ago, but I would say I'm less impressed with the slides. There's too much text, not enough graphic, and not enough explanation of your differentiator. So I'm pretty blunt. Amazing product. I think you could do much more better on the graph. What's really interesting is the cost of the reader. The cost of the reader is almost consumer price point. Yes. I'm puzzled by the slide about the market. You said it's a big market, but then you said it's a 300 million market. So for me, that's a small market. Can you, first question, clarify what's that market? Is it only for COVID-only testing? And the second question I have is on the competitive slide. So there's just one liner on the competitive, let's say, other contenders. They're a different approach. So I think you could refine that a little bit in your answer.
Yes, thank you very much for that feedback. In terms of the competitive analysis, that was specifically for COVID-19 serology, point of care testing in the United States. So the market size will depend very much on our use case, our go-to market strategy, and the markets that we're approaching.
So maybe you could refine that slide and having multiple angle, and this is a 300 million market, but there's many other that we can address that other technology cannot address. And
yes,
that might be linked to the second question, your differentiators to other technology. And I understand the electrochemical hybridization and its advantage, but I want to hear it firsthand.
Great, we have many advantages that allow us to penetrate the point of care testing market. Number one is we can detect multiple different types of analytes, both small molecule as well as large proteins. We can do that directly in whole blood. There's no need to process the sample. It's a direct assay that makes the consumable very simple. The reader, as you pointed out, will be a very consumer price point potentiostat, essentially, and it gives you digital results, gives you quantitative digital results. We can measure up to 6 biomarkers at the same time, and those digital results can be uploaded to the cloud to enable telemedicine, and the patient can monitor over time their quantitative results.
Kaylee, a question from you.
Yeah, just quickly on the differentiation, have you done direct comparison with some of the other competitive assays that are available?
Not yet. That's in the next step to do the standard correlation studies.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy, we're running over, so thank you so much. Kaylee and Alexandre, thank you so much. And over to the next.
Thank you. And now our last but not least pitch will be given by the co-founder and CEO of Vital Tracer. Azadeh, the floor is yours.
Hi, I still cannot see my, cannot see my screen.
We can hear your screen.
Okay.
So you can go, the timer is running, you have 2 minutes and 30.
Sure. All of us has experienced rising in our blood pressure. For example, when we have a job interview, or me right now, giving this pitch. Next. These rises are normal, but in some people, it becomes serious and need to be addressed. Hi, my name is Azadeh, and today I'm presenting you Vital Tracer, a medical smartwatch which is measuring all your vital signs through your wrist using optical sensor and AI technology. Next. 1.56 billion of people globally suffer from high blood pressure. Next. This includes 80% of elderly. Next. And still first reason of death. Next. Canada alone spending $250 billion annually to treating this chronic disease. Next. The current device available in the market to measuring blood pressure are cuff-based, goes around the arm, inflate and deflate. So it's bulky and not possible to continuous monitoring. Next. Different studies show that it's possible to prevent it by diagnosing it at the early stage, but you need a technology to continuous monitoring. It's not possible with the current device. That's why the solution become a Vital Tracer, optical sensor and AI technology measuring blood pressure. And it's not only limited to the blood pressure, but also oxygen level, skin temperature, respiratory rate, and more. Next. How it works, it gets different biosignals from the wrist, send it with the Bluetooth to the smartphone, and from smartphone to the online cloud. Next. We have an extensive team of experts, including myself, who has a 10 years experience in AI technology, biomedical area, and biosignals. Next. We are not selling our technology as a hardware only, but also we have a SaaS model, and we can customize our technology in terms of software and or hardware to the other companies, like Apple. We are this year only selling our technology to the researchers and clinical trials so they can concentrate it on their own clinical trial, but our main target market are hospitals and senior homes who needs to monitor all the patients at the same time in a real time. Next. We have a patent with a fasting regarding this innovation. Next. That's my favorite part. The main differentiation between us and Apple Watch that we are a medical device means that the accuracy of the result is guaranteed. The second one, we are clearly measuring the blood pressure, cuffless and continuously, which Apple cannot do it. We are B2B technology and concentrating on a patient, not a healthy subject. And we could localize our cloud for the hospitals that they can keep all the confidential information. Next. We did a patent, open our fundraising around, and we are doing manufacturing and clearance for this year. With the Vital Tracer, your health's going to be in your hand, or better yet, on your wrist. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azadeh. Great pitch, and I love seeing the evolution of it. So let's go to the judges, Austin, Ozan, and of course, Cedric.
Okay. I'll go first. Azadeh, thank you very much. I think you're the last presentation, so pretty brave. Brave of you. I know that, or at least my understanding is that, the elephant in the room is the Apple Watch, obviously. A lot of people have it. But my understanding is that it is not qualified to become a medical diagnostic device. And I think that's where your differentiation is. And although not a lot of people really realize it, so you're aiming for your hardware and your software to be kind of like a watch, a diagnostic watch for subscription by a doctor, or a medical professional. Is that how you're going to position it, or is it going to be over the counter type of thing?
We are not selling as a B2C to the individual for over-counter. It's B2B, so it's going to be for hospitals, but it's going to be something like reinsurable. And for senior homes, it's going to be B2B2C. So we are selling to the senior homes as a kind of wholesales, but the subscription models will be with the responsibility of the senior home management.
And how much more accurate is it? For example, the ECG functionality on the Apple versus yours. What's the big difference?
Right. So the main concentration or differentiation between us and Apple is more concentrated on a blood pressure, which has a huge market, and Apple cannot measure the blood pressure. Like the Series 6 doesn't have a blood pressure. So it's more specification for hypertension people and chronic disease who needs to manage their health. But in terms of the ECG, the accuracy of the ECG of the Apple Watch versus us are the same, but we are not only ECG, we are all in one for the vital tracer, for the vital sign monitoring. And the other differentiation that we could localize our cloud for the hospitals and senior homes. So all the confidential information is going to be in the hospitals. They are going to be owner.
Thank you for being here today, Azadeh, and congrats on the progress up to this point. I've had conversations with multiple companies recently who are looking for your product because they're doing population health management for payers. And in the slides that we saw prior to your pitch today, you mentioned a few go-to-market strategies. My first question is related to your go-to-market strategy. And it's, have you thought about or had discussions with companies that already have strong relationships with payers to do population management for chronic conditions?
Yes, exactly. We built a couple of connection, and we are in the progress of partnership with with our community, different startups who sells their other technology to the senior homes, but they don't have a hardware technology. So we are going to be as a partner of more providing our hardware, and then they're going to be more software. But I can say that at the same time, we are trying to have a very good database based on different clinical trials and pilot study that we are run. And we are going to have a patent portfolio, and we might go pitch for the bigger companies like Apple and Samsung and Fitbit to sell our main value proposition, which is a blood pressure algorithm. We might end up at that point.
I want to follow up on Austin's kind of theme here is, with other using other technologies or collaborating with other technologies. Now you claim that, you're going to be prescribed by the doctor here, which is very important. Can your device at that point, at that level of accuracy, communicate with other like auto injection type of devices so that they can deliver the drug based on the input or from your device? Can that happen?
Yes, of course. Yes. It's all going to be, if something's going to be as an automatic steps, we need to connect as an API to each other as two mobile apps together, and this is going to be as a kind of setup automatically to do so with the other technologies.
Okay.
Well, Azadeh, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Austin and Nazan. Thank you very much. That concludes the pitches.
Yeah. Well, that went very, very fast, eh?
Completely.
I didn't realize 10 pitches that went like that. Super interesting. I think now is the difficult time, the hardest time for the judges to actually decide.
Totally. Effectivement, la sélection ne va vraiment pas être facile pour nos juges. Que la qualité des présentations était formidable. Un gros merci à toutes les compagnies qui ont fait, je pense, un travail remarquable de mise en forme, de présentation synthétique. Et on sait que c'est pas facile dans ce domaine.
Je voudrais quand même peut-être dire les choses. Il y a eu des pitchs qui étaient vraiment bien structurés. Il y a eu des pitchs qui étaient bien structurés, mais dont la présentation était moyenne. Et il y a eu des pitchs qui devraient peut-être travailler un petit peu plus leur pitch. Donc,
l'accompagnement va être important.
Il y a un peu d'accompagnement en termes de pitch à refaire. Mais par contre, ce qui est vraiment ressorti, c'est que tous les produits étaient vraiment intéressants. Les innovations étaient vraiment bonnes.
Tout à fait.
Je pense que certains vont avoir... et le jury va devoir vraiment choisir entre le contenu et le contenant. Mais les deux, malheureusement, doivent aller main dans la main si on veut réussir à lever des fonds.
Tout à fait.
Et je pense qu'il y a des accompagnements qu'on leur offre.
Tout à fait. Et yes, c'est vraiment une très très belle transition parce que ça nous permet en fait d'abord de remercier tous les partenaires de cet événement qui ont été vraiment super généreux et super mobilisés, qui ont offert une multitude de différents prix, dont certains en nature. On va voir défiler dans un moment en fait une vidéo avec ces différents partenaires. Et c'est des prix de toutes sortes, de l'accompagnement légal, des abonnements gratuits à des associations qui sont vraiment des associations phares en ce moment, du mentorat justement dans tout ce qui est business. Donc ces supports sont vraiment très, très précieux et on le sait pour ces jeunes entreprises en démarrage, ça vaut de l'or. Donc, peut-être qu'on va pouvoir voir maintenant la vidéo qui va décrire un petit peu ces partenaires et voir en fait les gagnants de ces prix in-kind.
Well, I love all the prizes that are given, all the in-kind prizes actually that are given. I would say even they are priceless. But money is also and always a good thing too. So, ça n'a pas été évident. Il a fallu faire des choix, que ce soit pour les prix in-kind, je sais que les jurys continuent à travailler très très fort. Merci d'ailleurs pour leur temps et leur feedback aussi, leurs questions. Mais parmi tous nos partenaires, il y a eu aussi des prix en fait. Chacun des partenaires ont aussi eu en quelque sorte un coup de cœur. Ils se sont dit, moi écoute, I felt in love, j'ai envie de reconnaître. Et en fait, parmi nos partenaires, ils donnent toutes et tous un $3,000 en fait. Ce qui est quand même pas rien, un $3,000. Et donc, ils vont nous présenter ça. Et donc, parmi tous nos partenaires qui vont donc donner leur prix coup de cœur et offrir ce $3,000-là, je voudrais juste peut-être souligner le fait que among all the teams that were selected for this choice are among all the teams that presented or that applied. Donc, parmi tous les prix coup de cœur qu'on va voir dans quelques minutes, les choix qui ont été faits parmi toutes les startups qui ont appliqué. Donc, il y a eu beaucoup de travail pour sélectionner ces startups-là, puis certains ont eu vraiment un coup de cœur pour certaines d'entre elles. Donc, ne soyez pas surpris si vous n'avez pas vu leur pitch aujourd'hui, mais elles sont dans le cœur de nos partenaires. Donc, sans plus attendre, est-ce qu'on peut voir les résultats de ces prix coup de cœur?
Hi, I'm Alexandre Leroux from National Bank within the Healthcare and Life Science Group. I'm really excited to be part of this event as it's always enriching to hear from different startup companies with high potential. Today I had to choose the coup de cœur National Bank and to remit to the selected startup cash price of $3,000. It obviously was a tough decision as I've seen a lot of very promising startups. But I've based my decision on potential market reachability and the dynamism of the team. The National Bank with Carol will go to Heli Health. Congratulations.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jesse Patterson. I am Senior Director of Business Development at CKDM, and it's my pleasure to be here to announce the winner of the CKDM Prix Cœur de Coeur for the Effervescence Startup Pitch. CKDM is a biopharmaceutical consortium that funds innovative research, innovative collaborative research across Canada. We bring together our pharmaceutical members with academic and biotech researchers from across Canada, and work with other third-party funders to syndicate funding for this innovative research. We're proud to play a role in bridging kind of the funding gap between kind of academic sources of funding and the venture capital or private capital investments. And so we're very excited to be able to play a role in the Effervescence Startup Pitch and to see these great companies and their innovative technologies. We considered a number of companies, but ultimately selected our winner based on what we felt was a highly innovative platform that had been validated, that had substantial potential to really have a broad impact and substantial impact on drug development as a whole, and not just on a smaller kind of disease area, and really felt that they put together a great team and plan for going forward, and so are proud to announce that the CKDM Prix Cœur de Coeur winner for the Effervescence Startup Pitch this year is Perceive AI. So congratulations to Christian and your team, and we look forward to working with you going forward.
Bonjour, mon nom est Samir Monir, je représente la Caisse des Jardins du Réseau de la Santé et nous sommes fiers partenaires de l'événement Effervescence de Montréal. La Caisse des Jardins du Réseau de la Santé est un groupe spécialisé du secteur de la santé, des services sociaux, ainsi que des sciences de la vie et des technologies de la santé pour des jardins. Nous accompagnons et supportons les professionnels du milieu de la santé pour réaliser leurs rêves en tant qu'entrepreneurs et professionnels de la santé. Au-delà des produits bancaires et de financement pour votre entreprise et pour vos réalisations personnelles, nous vous accompagnons dans votre aventure entrepreneuriale afin d'atteindre votre objectif financier et votre rêve d'entrepreneur. La Caisse des Jardins du Réseau de la Santé est plus qu'une banque. C'est une solution complète pour votre entreprise et pour vos projets. Nous connaissons votre réalité et votre écosystème. Nous avons des solutions adaptées pour vous accompagner dans l'aventure que vous avez choisie. Notre prix de cœur est l'entreprise NVCare. NVCare est une entreprise innovante qui a su se démarquer rapidement dans son secteur d'activité avec un produit innovateur contre les infections des implants dentaires. Nous félicitons donc l'entreprise NVCare et plus particulièrement Dr Al-Hashidi et Dr Tamimi qui ont démontré du leadership, de la détermination dans leur parcours entrepreneurial.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous, je suis Julien Codroy, le directeur des communications et de l'événementiel de MedTech+, le consortium pan-canadien en technologie de la santé. Nous accompagnons les innovateurs de l'idéation à la commercialisation des technologies et de l'innovation dans le secteur de la santé. Notre gamme de services qui va de l'accompagnement à la subvention jusqu'à l'investissement dans les entreprises nous permet d'accompagner tout au long du continuum d'innovation les entreprises et les innovateurs du Québec et du Canada. C'est d'ailleurs notre équipe d'investissement et notre équipe de projet qui a évalué presque une 50aine de candidatures afin de nommer notre coup de cœur pour cette année. Notre coup de cœur pour cette année, c'est l'entreprise BioOptique, une entreprise montréalaise qui développe une solution non invasive pour mesurer la pression intra-abdominale et donc s'attaquer à un mal de société, le mal de dos. Nous sommes très heureux de nommer donc BioOptique comme étant notre coup de cœur cette année et nous félicitons l'ensemble des participants. Merci beaucoup.
Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous, mon nom est Alain Bakayoko. Je suis particulièrement fier d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui pour vous annoncer le prix coup de cœur de mon organisation PME Montréal dans le cadre de ce concours de pitch de start-up innovantes d'Effervescence 2021. Mon organisation PME Montréal est au cœur de l'écosystème montréalais en entrepreneuriat depuis maintenant plus de 5 ans. Nous offrons de l'accompagnement et du financement à des entrepreneurs à tous les stades de développement de leur entreprise. Depuis 2019, PME Montréal s'intéresse particulièrement au secteur des sciences de la vie et des technologies de la santé et nous offrons aux entrepreneurs à l'étape de validation et d'optimisation de leur stratégie commerciale de l'accompagnement. Dans le cadre de ce concours, nous avons révisé un grand nombre de candidatures tout aussi pertinentes l'une que l'autre et nous avons porté notre choix sur 3 finalistes. De ces finalistes, nous avons encore une fois porté notre choix sur notre coup de cœur pour les 3 raisons suivantes. D'abord, l'entreprise en question vise un secteur qui répond à un enjeu de santé très important au niveau de la santé de la femme et leur solution innovante permet aux femmes de reprendre un contrôle total sur leur santé. Deuxièmement, l'expertise développée par l'entreprise et acquise par l'entreprise, notamment à travers son équipe de jeunes talentueux dans différents domaines, nous a également séduits. Nous avons par exemple des gens en ingénierie, en sciences des données, du logiciel, mais aussi des sciences médicales. Et tout ça accompagné par un comité aviseur très solide. Enfin, les progrès réalisés en très peu de temps, tant au niveau du développement de produits qu'au niveau financier, nous a également impressionnés. Donc, c'est avec plaisir que je vous confirme que le prix coup de cœur de PME Montréal revient à Eli Health. Donc, félicitations à l'équipe. Et vous pouvez compter sur nous pour la suite. Merci.
vraiment un très très beau geste et un gros merci à nos partenaires, que ce soit la Banque nationale, le CQDM, évidemment Desjardins, la Caisse de la Santé, MedTech+, PME Montréal. Bravo à toutes les startups. Ça fait plaisir. Petite note pour Eli Health qui a remporté 2 prix en plus.
Tout à fait. Bravo à tous les gagnants. Et maintenant, je pense que le jury a statué et le moment est venu. Tant arrivé est arrivé. Et oui, Cédric est là. Donc, on te laisse la main pour dévoiler les résultats.
Merci. Et merci beaucoup, Mounia. Merci encore à tous les juges qui ont participé, qui ont donné leur énergie et leur temps. Et merci bien évidemment surtout à toutes les sociétés qui ont participé à la concurrence. Donc en fait, beaucoup d'énergie positive. Avant d'annoncer le prix, le jury voudrait probablement saluer une société qui s'est démarquée par son énergie. C'est la société Gynaware. Ida Desriches, très énergique. On voulait les féliciter en particulier. Vous avez tous été énergiques, mais celle-ci en particulier s'est démarquée. Pour le prix Anne-Marie, le jury a choisi la société Gentera, dont le président est Philippe Roche.
Merci beaucoup, Cédric. Merci beaucoup, Admiré, pour la présentation and the opportunity to talk to you today and see all the other wonderful startups. It's been incredibly educational and speaks to the vitality of the Montreal and Quebec ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Donc, on va faire un petit peu Donc, on va faire durer un petit peu le suspense avant de vous dévoiler le prix Pfizer, le grand prix. Moi, je vais vous parler du prix coup de cœur Effervescence. Tout d'abord, bonjour tout le monde. Très heureux de vous retrouver aujourd'hui pour présenter ce prix coup de cœur Effervescence qui symbolise vraiment l'esprit Effervescence. Ce qu'on veut reconnaître avec le prix Effervescence, c'est le futur des sciences de la vie. C'est le côté innovant de notre secteur, mais qui va aussi vers la durabilité et l'innovation sociale. Donc, on a choisi de reconnaître une start-up qui symbolise bien cette approche. Saviez-vous qu'au Québec, 60% des demandes dans les services de proximité pour les enfants d'âge préscolaire concernent l'orthophonie et les temps d'attente varient de 1 à 30 mois, de 12 à 30 mois. Donc c'est tout à fait inacceptable parce que selon les experts, le niveau de langage à 3 ans est le meilleur prédicteur de la réussite scolaire. Donc on a choisi une entreprise qui vise justement à transformer les services d'orthophonie afin de desservir plus rapidement et plus efficacement également un plus grand nombre de familles à travers le Québec et à moindre coût pour le système de santé. Donc, félicitations à l'entreprise API Enfance qui remporte le prix coup de cœur Effervescence 2021. Dévoilement du grand gagnant, donc je cède la parole maintenant à Cédric.
Merci beaucoup, Franck. Il ne manque qu'une enveloppe, comme aux Oscars, pour décacheter et savoir qui est le gagnant. Donc, le jury a délibéré et le jury est heureux d'annoncer que le prix Pfizer est décerné à Eli Health, Marina Pavlovic-Rivas. Félicitations.
Wow, toute une soirée pour elle.
Wow, toute une soirée, en effet. Merci beaucoup à Pfizer, à PME Montréal, à Banque nationale et à CQIB pour ces prix. On est extrêmement choyés aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup. Et on est d'autant plus reconnaissant après avoir vu la grande qualité des présentations aujourd'hui et de l'innovation qui se fait en santé de la vie à Montréal et ailleurs. Donc, merci vraiment beaucoup, beaucoup à tous les partenaires pour ces prix. Merci beaucoup.
Bravo. Bravo. Merci beaucoup. Vidéo. Merci. Et donc, bien, enfin, encore une fois, je remercie tous les participants qui ont fait vraiment une très belle performance, tous les juges qui ont participé, bien évidemment tous les commanditaires, notamment les grands commanditaires qui ont décerné les prix. Franck, encore une fois, et toute l'équipe de Montréal In Vivo, je vous dis à l'an prochain et merci encore.
Certainement à l'année prochaine, mais en attendant, rebonjour tout le monde. Très heureux de vous retrouver pour clôturer cette deuxième édition d'Effervescence. Moi aussi, j'aimerais féliciter tous les finalistes et tous les gagnants du concours de pitch de start-up. Bravo à toutes et à tous. C'était vraiment très impressionnant, on les a tous écoutés. Alors, nous étions là lundi matin pour l'ouverture et ces 3 journées ont passé très, très vite en ce qui me concerne. J'espère que c'était le cas pour vous aussi, hein, et que vous avez apprécié cet événement complètement réinventé, 100% virtuel. À toi, Nathalie.
C'est mon tour. On est en train de tourner nos notes déroulantes. Alors, Effervescence 2021, c'était plus de 100 conférenciers, des panélistes, des formateurs. Plus de 560 participants se sont inscrits finalement, qui se sont enregistrés à l'événement. C'est aussi 132 offres d'emploi qui ont été offertes à 740 personnes sur Brand Day. Donc, 740 personnes se sont inscrites et ont échangé pendant 262 heures, sans oublier tous nos commanditaires. Alors, merci, WAS, et je pense qu'on peut être content. C'est une belle réussite déjà. On peut dire mission accomplie, disons ça comme ça. Votre événement signature des sciences de la vie au Québec démontre sans l'ombre d'un doute toute l'effervescence de notre secteur.
C'est donc le moment des remerciements. Alors, tout d'abord, merci à tous les conférenciers et panélistes. On a vu près d'une centaine d'entre eux ont participé. Ils ont accepté notre invitation, ils ont accepté de relever le défi. Je dirais que sans leur expertise, leur connaissance puis leur envie de partager, il n'y a pas de conférence parce que le contenu doit passer en premier, content first, comme on dit. Donc, merci à tous ces gens-là. Merci également à tous nos invités d'honneur. On a eu des ministres, on a eu la mairesse, donc qui ont pris le temps de s'entretenir avec nous ou de nous livrer leur message. C'est un message de soutien fort au secteur des sciences de la vie et technologies de la santé. Donc, très apprécié également. Un grand merci. Mais surtout, un immense merci à vous tous, de l'autre côté de vos écrans, les quelques 600 participants d'Effervescence 2021. En achetant votre billet, vous soutenez l'événement, bien entendu, mais c'est aussi un soutien à l'ensemble du secteur des sciences de la vie qui peut ainsi rayonner à la hauteur de sa contribution à la société. Donc, encore merci.
Je tiens à remercier tous nos partenaires financiers qui ont contribué, comme vous le savez, à rendre l'événement Effervescence possible et un beau succès. Je nommerai en particulier le gouvernement du Québec, Pfizer, Novartis, Boehringer Ingelheim, Roche, Admaré Bioinnovation, Corréalis Pharma, le CQDM, Fasken, Forum IA Québec, Gilead, Investissement Québec, Montréal Newtech et plusieurs autres qui, grâce à vous tous, on a réussi à avoir un événement à la hauteur de vos attentes. J'aimerais faire un petit mot particulier pour notre comité organisateur. Vous le savez, on se réunit depuis l'été dernier, un grand groupe de partenaires pour développer cet événement, trouver le contenu qui va vous intéresser, qui va être intéressant pour l'ensemble des gens. Donc, je remercierai en particulier Annie chez Bio-Québec, Manon du Fonds de recherche Québec en santé, Marie-Kim de Génome Québec, Maxime de l'Oncopole, Kat de la Faculté de médecine de l'Université de Montréal, Maria de la Faculté des sciences de l'UQAM, Caroline de l'Institut de recherche clinique de Montréal, Damien du Neuro, Julia de l'Université McGill, Néla de Polytechnique Montréal, Annie de l'Institut Transmedtech, Myriam d'Amorkem, Shirley d'Admaré, Dominique de l'Université Concordia, Anna de District 3, Mali Prud'homme de Sage Innovation, merci beaucoup de votre engagement. Ça fait toute une différence et c'est un plaisir de travailler avec vous.
Et moi, j'aimerais profiter du fait que j'ai le micro pour souligner le travail de toute mon équipe chez Morning Vivo. Ils ont travaillé, mais tellement fort à l'organisation et à la promotion d'Effervescence, ça n'a juste pas de bon sens. Donc, Farah, Sabrina, Claudie, Ba, Véronique, Ève, Alizé, Diane, et tout particulièrement ma collègue de longue date, Nathalie.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup, merci infiniment et bravo à tous et à toutes. Enfin, je ne voudrais surtout pas passer sous silence le travail remarquable de l'équipe d'Altitude C. Leur audace, le professionnalisme dont ils ont fait preuve, leur efficacité, leur créativité, ils ont fait d'Effervescence un événement vraiment haut de gamme qui se différencie et grâce à leur vision et à leur talent, il a quand même gagné le prix de la meilleure conférence au Canada en 2019. Donc merci à Thomas, Andrea, Étienne, Stéphanie, Alex et toute l'équipe.
L'ensemble des grandes conférences seront disponibles sur le site web d'Effervescence. Dans peut-être 1 ou 2 semaines, on est en train de préparer le contenu pour le rendre disponible sur le site web. Donc, tous les détenteurs de billets, vous pourrez revoir le contenu à votre convenance. On vous invite également à jeter un coup d'œil aux vidéos capsules éclairs qui ont été enregistrées, ainsi qu'aux présentations étudiantes qui seront également disponibles sur le site web de l'événement. Je vous en prie, soyez généreux pour compléter en grand nombre le sondage de satisfaction. Ces petites indications que vous allez nous donner vont être très utiles pour améliorer la prochaine édition de votre événement des sciences de la vie et des technologies de la santé.
Parce que oui, il va y avoir une autre édition, mais en attendant, moi j'aimerais attirer votre attention sur le fait qu'on va avoir un événement X Effervescence. Il y en aura probablement plus qu'un, mais il y en a d'ores et déjà un qui est planifié avec la compagnie Roche. Donc gardez un œil là-dessus. Et donc je vous donne un rendez-vous pour un Effervescence 2022, j'espère cette fois-ci en chair et en os. Merci encore du fond du cœur à tous et bonne soirée.